I said it before the previous session as well. This is actually the first time I'm involved in GroupBy. I've never presented, and I finally got to moderate. So when Daniel asked me if I wanted to help out, I was like, yes, please. As I love this conference. It's
yeah, absolutely. The whole community around GroupBy is awesome. So yeah, every time that there is an opening, I love to propose my sessions because yeah, it's a great community.
it is, and especially the focus on community and community tools like you're
Mm-hmm,
presenting.
mm-hmm,
All right, so I can see that it's about time to start. So for
mm-hmm.
those of you who are just tuning in, whether it's on Zoom or YouTube or even watching the recording, welcome to GroupBy and Javier's session on community tools. I'll kick it over to you and mute myself, and then you can just take it from there.
All right, very good, Catherine. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are watching this presentation. All right, so today we're going to be going through my session about how to do SQL Server monitoring using free and community generated tools. Right? So let's start. Here is the GroupBy code of conduct. Important to have it. So there is the URL down there, groupby.org/code of conduct. So feel free to reach it. I believe that this slide was also presented during the previous presentations. So here is the title of my session. And this is a little bit about myself. My name is Javier Villegas. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I work as an IT director in the data and BI at Mediterranean Shipping Company for the last 15 years. I'm involved with SQL Server since version 6.0. So I don't even remember how many years and versions in between. My specialization is high availability, disaster recovery, and performance tuning. So that is why, as I mentioned to Claudio earlier, the DbaTools is something that that I use and I love, and I have a couple of slides and a couple of solutions that I'm using from DbaTools that I actually love and I use on a daily basis. I am Microsoft MVP in the data platform category since 2016, and recently I became a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm involved with different communities since several years ago, especially in the PaaS community. And I like to present myself as a technical speaker when I have time and I get invited to present to communities. I definitely gonna be there. So I love to connect, learn, and share with communities. On the left side of the screen, you will see my contact information, email address, Twitter, LinkedIn, and my blog. Feel free to connect with me to talk about this presentation or any other thing that you would like to discuss, or just to stay connected, right? As I said, I love to get connected with people and share. So let's start with one of the notes that I like to emphasize at the beginning, right? All the DBAs, we all have our own set of tools that we been using for, written from somebody else or written by ourselves, and we use when we have to do performance tuning or troubleshooting, right? So the idea of this session is basically to know additional tools, right? Some of them coming from Microsoft that we already have, right? And some others coming from different community experts, right? the premise of this presentation is that all of them are free. So the main idea is to increase the size of this toolbox that we have, and add these tools, these scripts, one of them, all of them, to use when we need to do this kind of troubleshooting, monitoring, or solve a particular problem. Another thing that I like to emphasize always in this presentation is that there is no a single magic that will fix bad code. And with that, I mean that we should definitely spend time and resources with our dev teams, right? All the teams that are involved in writing T-SQL code or any programming language which is hitting the database that we do monitor, right? Because if we spend, let's say, 1 hour per week, a couple of hours per session, per month, just trying to come up with the best practices and promoting the best practices, the one that Microsoft promotes, and also the ones that we want to implement in our environment, definitely at the long term, we won't need to use any of these tools or any of this troubleshooting process that often, right? So definitely spend time with the people who write code in your environment. This way, you can tell them exactly what they can do and what they should not do in this environment, right? So it's something that I learned over the years, and definitely it's giving me good results. So now let's describe a little bit how this troubleshooting process is going to be. Basically, it's not something that one day we wake up and say, oh, today we have a performance problem. Let's see where we are at, or let's see what we have in our environment. No, definitely this is a continuous process and a repeatable process, right? In where we have to spend time and resources observing the behavior of our SQL environment. And with that, I mean, taking this famous baseline, right, in when we capture different metrics from the environment when it is running under normal conditions, right? With that, when we are under pressure, when we are suffering a performance issue, right, we're gonna take a new snapshot of these counters, and then we will be able to compare it with the baseline and easily understand and see where we have the differences, right? So if we are running a problem with the CPU usage pressure, or hit on additional hit on 10 dBs or recompilations, etc., doing this comparison between the current status and the baseline will tell us exactly which point we should be addressing first, right? After that, we're gonna be adjusting or fixing the problems somehow, and we're gonna repeat the whole process, right? Keep monitoring, observing, and in the moment in where we have this this performance problem, we're going to be able to easily understand what's going on. So these are some of the topics that we will be covering today. You will see that in the top part of the agenda, we will be covering solutions that are coming directly from Microsoft, right? Some of them, or most of them, we are aware of, but let's try to dig a little bit on how we can use them on a different way, or yeah, try to take all the benefits all of these tools. In the bottom part of the agenda, we will go through some of the most let's say, use it solutions created by different community experts, right? And see some examples on how we can use them to do the troubleshooting and monitoring in our environment. So let's start with Performance Monitor and Profiler. Most probably these two tools are the first two tools that you use it when you started into the DBA world, right? Performance Monitor to trace your Windows environment for this activity, CPU activity, memory, and also when SQL Server is installed, you also have a bunch of metrics and counters that you can collect from Performance Monitor. Batch requests per second, transactions per second, active logins, many others. So this is something that we can see the activity happening as right now, right, with this chart. And we can also collect the traces into different destinations to do further analysis or to build this baseline that we were discussing earlier. Right? So definitely Performance Monitor is something that everybody knows. Then on the other hand, we have SQL Profiler. Again, Profiler, a tool that is coming since the very first version of SQL Server, and is one of the tools that we all use when we have to, let's say, understand what is happening right now in our SQL instance. And with that, I mean that we can easily start Profiler and we can see all the statesmen getting in and out. I mean, starting, completing, statement, procedures, ad hoc query, everything. And we can see all the resources that they've been using in terms of, for example, duration, reads, writes, write on 10db, etc. Again, we can see it and we can save it into a trace. What is really interesting is that we can combine the outputs of Performance Monitor and Profiler, right, to have a single view of what is going on or what's going on in our environment in a particular time frame, right? And we can see all this information matching at the same time, right? We're gonna see how within Profiler, we can import Performance Monitor traces and match and correlate all the activities. So in a single view, we can see the transaction or the processes running in our SQL Server, and at the same time, the activity in our disk, in CPU, and any other metric related to the host. Right? So definitely tools that we all know. Then we can consider Management Studio Activity Monitor. Again, another tool that we have within SSMS, and we can use it at any time. To be honest, not many of us use this tool because there are others. But what I like from Activity Monitor in particular is that in SQL Server 2019, Microsoft has introduced this feature called lightweight query profiling, right? And what is that? Let's assume that you have a report that runs at night, let's say 5 in the morning, and normally takes 45 minutes to complete, right? That critical report will generate the output and will go to management. So in the morning, when they get into the office, they get these reports to take, several decisions or any other thing. This particular day, you arrive into the office, you get your cup of coffee, and you receive the phone call at 9 a.m. saying, hey, this report that we should have it in our desk by now, we don't have it yet. So you know that that is going to be one of those funny days. So you leave your coffee there, you open your tools to start doing troubleshooting, and you notice that this report that, again, it normally runs in 45 minutes, it's still running. But you don't know at what point, what is the current progress of that process within your instance. You don't know if it is, the process is 10%, 50%, or it is about to finish 90+%. Knowing that, you will be able to take better decisions, right? What should I do? It is about to finish. Okay, let's wait few more minutes because we're going to have it. It is, at half or starting. Well, maybe we need to take another kind of decisions and do another kind of troubleshooting. Okay, with this feature, lightweight query profiling, right, we will be able to see from Activity Monitor, right, and also from Management Studio, we're going to see it later in the demo, the current estimated, actually it's not the current, the estimated query progress, right? So we're going to have one query, one process running, one stored procedure, and we will see exactly, or not exactly, sorry, in an estimated query progress. So at what point of the execution it is right now. And with that, again, we're going to be able to take different kind of decisions. Additionally, this feature called lightweight query profiling, something important is that Microsoft, as I said, it is enabled by default in SQL Server 2019, but it also ported back to 2016 and 2017, right? It's not enabled by default, right? You have to enable it using a trace flag, but you have the possibility to use it also in previous SQL Server version, right? So that is important as well. And then we have also within Management Studio this performance dashboard reports, which are basically based on RDL files, reporting services files, right? That you can use it within Management Studio to get certain performance reports or performance report from your environment, right? Several years ago, this was something that you had to go to the Microsoft webpage, download it, apply certain script to the instances in where you want to run this. But now this is coming within Management Studio and you don't have to install anything. So just executing this performance dashboard report, you're going to be able to have this output very quickly. And then we have dynamic management objects, right? Views and functions. These are read-only objects that are living within our SQL instance, right? And basically, this is how SQL Server interact with us to tell us what the status of different components within the databases are. For example, here I have some categories like transactional index, missing indexes, querying stat and plans, and the names of these views or functions, right? But there are many more, right? Related to replications, related to availability groups. So the only thing we have to do is just query these objects and come up with a result set, right? And also joining the output of these views and functions, we're going to be able to come up with a much richer set of information. Something important to mention is that every single monitoring solution, either free, community related, or paid, is based on dynamics management views and functions, right? So this is the way, as I said, how SQL Server tells us what is going on and what was going on in our server in certain areas, right? So important to know them, right? We're gonna cover some of them later. And then we have extended events, right? Something that definitely I like to spend some time talking about it, because it's where Microsoft is investing these days when we have to do some sort of trace or troubleshooting. Earlier, we talked about SQL Server Profiler. And one of the problems that we may have with Profiler is that if our instance in where we are doing troubleshooting is running into problems and it is under pressure, if we start Profiler and we don't set the filters in the right way just to capture what we are looking for, we can introduce more problems into the instance than the ones that we are trying to solve, right? So we have to be very carefully on how we use Profiler. Another thing about Profiler is that it is deprecated, right? Microsoft is not doing investment anymore in Profiler, right? Even if it is coming with the major SQL Server releases, right? They are not changing it. They are not doing anything. And on the other hand, with extended events for new features in SQL Server, they put these events in traces option within extended event, right? The benefit of extended event is that they are really light, right? Absolutely light. And we can set up any kind of extended event to collect traces, send the output to, a file like an XML file to the ring buffer in memory and then consume it. We have several targets in where we can send all this output, right? The output is coming through XML format. So then easily just parsing XML, we can get the results in tables, and it's like just having our traces on a SQL table, right? So definitely extended event is something that is around since SQL Server 2008, 2008 R2, and definitely is one of the most important features to use when we do troubleshooting, right? Here we have some of the components related to extended events. And when we go through the demo, we will see that there are several points that definitely touch Profiler, right? We will see some, concepts that we are already familiar because we've been working with Profiler before. Another important thing to consider when we are doing troubleshooting are the query plans, right? Either estimated query plan or actual query plan, and even the live execution stat, right? We can get the output in different format, like in text, in XML, or even in a graphical way, right? And with that, we can jump to the first external tool, which is SentryOne Plan Explorer, right? This is a tool dedicated to do analysis on execution plans, right? And it is free. You can run it as a plugin within Management Studio or like an external tool, right? And it is really useful when you have to, let's say, read or troubleshoot on a complex and large query plan. With Management Studio, you can do something, but the right tool to do it could be this Plan Explorer, because it has different ways to address or analyze these particular complexes plans. Another tool or another feature actually that we have within SQL Server is Query Store, right? This is a feature that we have since SQL Server 2016 Service Pack 1. And I like to call it like the flight recorder of our SQL Server user databases, right? You know, on every plane, on every flight, you have this black box that basically captures all the statistics, all the metrics, all the usage that is happening in that particular flight. Well, this is kind of similar for your particular user database, right? This feature is disabled by default in every SQL Server on-premise version, but it's enabled in Azure SQL Database, right? And it is enabled by default. You can easily enable it. And what it's going to do? Well, what I just said, it will capture all the runtime statistic for every single statement, procedure, process, report running in that particular user database. And it will also capture information related to weight types, right? And also we can see for particular procedures or statement, how the query plan or the plan has changed over time. And in a graphical way, we can see if a particular plan has over the last days or week has changed the plan, and if that plan was maybe not good enough, or at least not as good as the previous one, and we have the possibility even to force one particular plan from this query store dashboard, or even with T-SQL, right? So this is a feature that I like to mention because, since then, with this query store, there are other features that are coming at the top of it to adjust performance, like intelligent query processing, automatic query tuning, etc. Right? So definitely something to consider. And we're gonna, see here some examples of the output of, one particular statement, how it was executed over time. We can also see the top 25 resource consumer during the last hour, week, month. And with that, we can just focus on the ones that are the most expensive one, and we can take actions. We even have the possibility of check which are the most critical weight statistic for the whole database, or for particular processes. And with that, let's gonna jump into the first part of the demo. So let me spin up my virtual machine. Let's see if it is still here. Not this one, but this one. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about this lightweight query profiling, right? And with that, what I will do, I have this query here. I will select from Management Studio, include live query statistics, right? So this icon. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to run it, right? This is something that, again, we know about it. It is there since a while. We can see the execution plan as it's coming, but note something important. We can see here the estimated query process. So here it's been running like 19%. So, and we see how it's been executing, and we see the whole progress. We also see it down here, right? So we see it in two different places, right? And again, we see how this is moving, right? And at this point is stuck in the 19%. We can also run, I'm going to stop this one, and I will run this other one, right? And again, we go here and we see how the query is progressing. So with that, as I said, we can take different decisions. This is moving fast. So maybe we wait, or if it is stuck at 10%, we have another thing that we can consider to take decisions, right? And it just finished. So now you can tell me, all right, this is nice, but I don't run my workload, my critical workload using Management Studio. This is, I mean, what we run is coming from a web server, a middle tier, an application server. So it's not coming through Management Studio, right? So how we can know the progress of these particular queries? All right, so we're gonna come up here with here we have activity running randomly on my instance, right? This is basically running stuff, sample queries against the demo database. So we leave it there. We go here to Management Studio, right click, and we go to here at the instance level, we go to Activity Monitor, right? When we go to Activity Monitor, this will take a few seconds to start populating the different charts that we have, right? Like process CPU time, wait time, database IO, and batch requests per second. And we're gonna get, information about the different processes running. We're gonna see information related to the database files, right? But then here at the bottom, we have this one called active expensive queries, right? And with that, we see all the queries that are running that the system detected as expensive. And what we can do with that, we just do right click at the top of it, right? And what do we have? Show live execution plan. And with that, we just click over it. We see the live execution plan, and we also have here the estimated query progress, right? So with that, we can see if it is moving fast, slow, at what rate, right? And I can easily go back to Activity Monitor, choose another one, and do the same, right? And with that, I see the estimated query progress. Right? So this one is giving us a ton of useful information. So very good. Let's stop this one for a minute. All right. So then I will show you a little bit about what I was talking about, profiler and performance monitor. Here I have a trace that I captured a while back. So I will open my trace file. Right? So here I have all the activity that I capture on my instance, right? All the, statement start, complete, etc. This is reading the file. So here is populating the output. So then, at the same time, I had performance monitor running and capturing. It is important to mention that both of the traces had to be running at the same time, right? So we have this match in terms of timestamp. So we go here and we said import performance data, right? And when we do that, it's going to ask us to pick up the performance monitor trace. So this trace had a lot of counters that we were capturing back then. So I would say that I would like to see my percentage idle time, for each of the disk. I also like to see transactions, logins per second, and additionally, I want to check batch requests per second, right? So we hit OK. It's import all the data captured through Performance Monitor, right? And here we can do an analysis. We see that there was a peak here. So when we click on this part of the chart, all the data that we have here in Profiler will align to this particular point in time. So we know at the top which were the statement that were running at that time. We see the output in a chart, and also we have here the different counters that we choose, right? We can also specify a range to do better analysis and zoom in that particular time frame, right? So again, here we see a peak. We're gonna click here, right? And we see exactly what was going on at that particular time, right? Something that I like to use when we have these traces that we capture in parallel, right? Let's close this one, and then we can just go to the to one of the demo databases, do right click, we go to these reports, and then when we go report, we see a bunch of reports that we have within Management Studio. These are the dashboard that we have, and we can do, for example, disk usage by table, right? So then it's going to take a few seconds, and it's going to come up with the report telling us table by table on this particular database, how many rows in terms of reserved space, data usage, index usage, and use. And with that, there are many other reports, right? Again, this is part of Management Studio. All right. Then let's switch for a minute to extended events, and let's see one of the examples that I have. And this is actually something that I use a lot in my environment, right? First of all, let's comment out this. What I have here is a session, an extended event session that will capture here SQL errors. Oops. SQL errors, right? So I want to capture from my instance all the SQL related errors, right? And with that, I want the client application name, host name, database ID, SQL text, and more information, right? I also want to exclude the errors number, certain errors numbers that I know that we have many and maybe I'm not interested. And then I set the target to go to a particular folder in my drive, right? So what's the reason I use this? For example, when we release a new version of our application, right? We know that in theory it should be tested and well tested, so we shouldn't have any troubles. But sometimes we have this problem. For example, store procedures that now are requesting additional parameters and we are not passing it through the application, or we are trying to get into a table that doesn't exist anymore, or a column name was changed, you name it, right? But with that, as soon as we apply the new version of the application and we have this running, we can get all the errors that are happening in my instance, and we can do any kind of grouping or aggregation to see, oh, this object is raising one error per second, so definitely I need to go there and do something, right? So what I'm gonna do as part of this demo, I will delete the existing files that we have. Then I will create the extended event session and I will start it, All right, so I'm just starting the session. This is running in background and generating the output into this particular folder. Right? Then down here, what I have is an XML parser that basically grabs the output, the file live. Oh, let me uncomment this. Live, and is showing me all the output that we have in this file and just doing an XML parse. So what I'm going to do here is I will generate random errors, like, for example, division by 0. I'm going to run it several times. Then I will create a store procedure that is also doing a division by 0 and is also doing a select from a table that doesn't exist. Right? So I will create the store procedure and I will execute it multiple times. So this is raising errors, right? And many others errors that may be happening within the instance. So when we run the script that is parsing the output file, right, you will see that here we have live all the errors that we are getting in our instance. Division by 0, we got it 7 times, right? We have the statement that was raising the error. We also have the first time that the error shows up and the last time. We have the application name that was raising the error. In this case, it was my management studio, from which machine and which user. Right? We also have the other error related to the store procedure. Right? We have the statement. We have the store procedure name here. Right? And again, we have first time it happened, last time it happened, the error number, application name, host name. So to me, this is really useful. Another thing that I'm using extended event is basically to capture statements that are running for more than 1 hour, right? And with that, I just saving into this file. I'm parsing it, and with that I can, do a daily check to see, oh, maybe today we have this, and this statement that were taking longer than what we expected. And with that, we can do troubleshooting and analysis. So definitely something that extended event I use a lot. And then the other tool that we mentioned was SentryOne Plan Explorer. So I will open an execution plan that we created earlier. From Management Studio, you can save it directly to an XML file. You can get the statement and you can get the whole plan diagram. And since this one is a really complex one, we can do some in, some out. We can just go directly to the processes in where we have a red or a yellow, just to see, oh, this is where maybe we are having some sort of issues, right? And then do an analysis. So definitely Plan Explorer, another tool that we should all have in our toolbox.
Here, we got a question from Mihail. He's asking, is it trace flag 7412, which we need to turn on to view live query progress in SQL Server 2016 SP1? Now, I can Google that if you can't remember the trace flags.
I have it in my slide, actually, in my notes. I believe it is 7412.
Perfect.
Right? Yeah, you can enable it as a global trace flag or per session, right? Again, the feature is lightweight query profiling, so it's not adding too much trouble or too much or additional workload. Of course, something it is, but not much, right? So definitely something to consider. Of course, as you know, every single recommendation, just don't go to production and do it right away, right? Test it in another environment that is not too critical, get familiar with the feature, and then you know, you can definitely use it.
Good
In my
advice. Thank
case,
you.
yeah, in my environment, I have a mix of 2017 and 19, and in the 17 ones, I use them in most of them, not in all of them, but most of them. All right, let's resume this. So these are some of the normal phrases that we all get at some point of our career, or you know, on a daily basis in some cases, right? Why my application is running slow, why it's taking too much, so fix it quickly. So now let's go to the tools that are created by different community experts, right? In this case, I believe that most of us are already using this tool, but for the ones that don't know, this one is SP Who's Active. This is a must-have script, right? Definitely. This is created by Adam Mechanic more than 10 years ago, and the function of this this script is basically to take a picture of what's going on your server, on your instance, or the one that you are monitoring right now, in this particular moment. So you receive that phone call saying my SQL Server is running slow. So the first thing you do is just run SP Who's Active and take this picture. And with that, you can easily see, for example, if you have sessions that are running for hours, if you have sessions that are involved in a log, if you have sessions that are waiting for something, right? You can see the CPU usage for each of the session. You can also see each of the session, how, you know, the reads, the writes, the usage on DMV. And so you have this picture, and you know, the beauty of this, that you're running and it come back almost immediately. So you can run it as many times as you want to get this output. And with that, you see, oh, I have this that is taking too long. I need to do something. I have this 5 session involved in a log, so I can find the one that is at the top of the chain and take an action, right? So definitely SP Who's Active without any parameter. You just can go there and run it, and you're gonna get this right away. Down there is the URL. Then at the end, I have one slide which is covering all the references, right? But you can also use SP Who's Active on a SQL agent job to run it on a schedule basis, for example, once a minute, once every 5 minutes, etc., and take this picture and save the output into a table, right? So with that, when you get at the office 8 a.m. in the morning and you say, hey, what was going on at the instance, maybe at 4 a.m. in the morning because something was not running very well. You go to this table in where you capture all the output, and you can see exactly what was happening at 4 a.m. in the morning where you were sleeping. The documentation for SP Who's Active is quite extensive. There are recent changes that also include the execution plan for each of the sessions in the output. So definitely this is a must-have tool, right? So, and again, it's quite useful. Then many years ago, I create my own version of SP Who's Active, which I call SPDBA currently exec, which stands for currently executing, which is basically a wrapper of SP Who's Active. Of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, all these solutions are based on dynamic management objects, views, and functions. Right? So this one has, a reduced subset of, the same picture that we were talking before. But the main difference that I put in here is that, instead of returning only one result set, when the execution or the picture identifies that there are logs within the instance, it's going to return a second result set, right? Just with the sessions that are involved in the log. So this way you can just pay attention to that reduced result set, the second one, and just go directly to the logs. So it's also published in GitHub, so you can definitely go there, download it, and even contribute if you would like to. And then we have the solution from Brent Ozar, First Responder Kit. Right? This is an open source solution, which is also published. You can register through the Brent Ozar site, but you're going to be redirected to GitHub, in where you have documentation and you have the latest version of this First Responder Kit. Once a month, more or less, he published an update, right? So we just go and can download the most recent update. And this First Responder Kit has several components. Right? It's not only one store procedure. Actually, there are a couple of them. We have SP Blitz, right? Which basically tells you in a result set all your health information from your instance, right? So let's say that you receive a SQL Server that is the first time that you jump in, and you want to see how it is configured, if there are, some of the settings or configuration that are not following the best practices, for example, so misconfigurations, or, you would like to get this output that there are no backups for this instance. There are no recent integrity check for the user databases, right? So you're going to get all this information in a result set. And the beauty of this is that you're going to get it sorted by the first column, which is the importance, the relevance of the finding. Of course, if there are critical problems, they're going to come up with priority number 1. And if there are just, things with less priorities, will come at the end. What is the goal here? To get this empty, right? So that means that your SQL Server is really in good shape, right? And you don't have to worry about anything, right? But then let's say that you are running into troubles right now. You have SP Blitz First, which is basically going to do a deep analysis of what's going on in this particular moment. And again, it's going to return, right, this result with priorities, right? And you're going to be able to address them in this order of relevance. When you want to dig into your plan cache to see if you have troubles like, for example, parameter sniffing, or not running the plans in parallel, or maybe using the previous version or the legacy version of the cardinal estimator, right? SP Blitz Cache will do this deep analysis of your plan cache, and it will return you all the problems that it found through the different plans that are in the cache. One of the beauty of this first responder kit solution is that there is one column in where Brent has included a link to the documentation in order to provide you with assistance on how to fix that particular problem, right? For SP Blitz, SP Blitz index, and also for Blitz cache, you're gonna have this output that will help you to solve or address the problem. Additionally, we have SP Blitz index, right? That will go through all the indexes in the whole instance in one particular user database, or even only one table, depending on the parameters that you use. And it's going to give you this report that not only the missing indexes, but also on how you've been using the indexes, right? Maybe if you have indexes that they were never used, or you have indexes that are overlapping or duplicate, right? Or even, if there are indexes or proposals for new indexes. So definitely, a solution that we should all be aware of. One of the things that I like of the first responder kit is that, again, you can also create a SQL shop to run this on a scheduled basis and save all the output into a user table. And then with Power BI, you can just refresh the data from that table and get this sort of dashboard. Unfortunately, he has discontinued this Power BI, so he's not doing any further changes or improvement, but it is definitely there, and you can download it and use it if you would like to. But again, the beauty is just to use the scripts and get this output and try to come up with a quick fix. And then we have from the SQL Server Tiger team this script called BPCheck, Best Practice Checker. What it does is basically compare your instance, the instance in where you are running the script, versus the best practices that Microsoft gave us, right? And with that, it's going to tell you all the points in where you are not following the best practices in that particular area, right? So definitely one that we should have a look. Then we have Glenberry SQL Server performance queries, right? These queries, basically, we have one per SQL Server version, right? There are even some of them that's running SQL Server 2005. Hopefully nobody is using it, but eventually you can go and download it. And also there are scripts just targeted to Azure SQL Database or Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, right? So we can download the one for our particular SQL Server version. We also can download an empty Excel file with all the the spots in where we should do the copy paste of the output, just to do analysis on another time, or even save the output and share it with somebody else, right? Here are some of the examples on how or the type of information that you may have with this script from Glenberry, right? Information about the OS and the SQL Server, CPU, DMV, IOPS, latency, and you name it. And there are some sections of the scripts in where you can get some sort of warning, say, hey, this is really misconfigured. You should take some kind of actions, right, for some of the component. And then we have Powershell and DbaTools, right? We've been talking before the previous session. When you have an environment in where you have not only one SQL Server, but you have tens or hundreds of SQL Server distributed within your LAN, within the country, or around the world, right? And you have to run processes and collect information or apply stuff in several environments at the same time. Well, PowerShell and DbaTools is the right way to go. There are a ton of categories of stuff that you can do with DbaTools. These categories include, for example, availability groups, information for databases, replication, information from 10db, you name it. Right? There are a lot of things to do. The one that I use the most is basically the ones that allow you to synchronize system objects between instances. For example, you have a disaster recovery environment, right, with a primary and one or more secondaries, right? Okay, you have availability group to synchronize your user databases. So you won't lose a single bit of data, but you also have to synchronize, you have the system objects, right? Logins, shows, alerts, certificate, SSIS packages, bunch of other things that are not covered with availability groups, right? With a simple line of code using DbaTools, you can synchronize all these system objects from the primary to all the replica, right? And eventually you can also script out all those system objects and save it into a file, and then just put this file into your repository, right? So you can have a backup and keep track of different changes. So definitely something that I use a lot in many cases, but also including this one. Something that I like from DbaTools is that it combines with other community solutions. Before, we mentioned about the Glennsberry SQL Diagnostic Queries, right? From DbaTools, we can call the Glennsberry solution. We can go to, use the real beauty of this, which is, as I said, go to hundreds of instances and run it everywhere and collect the output in a central location. Maybe DbaTool is not the best tool if you are running only one server. But again, if you have multiple, right, definitely is the way to go. Right? Even if you have one, you should consider it, right? But when you have more than one, definitely is the way to go. And this is how I've been using it. Then we have Azure Data Studio. We know that Azure Data Studio is the multi-platform solution provided by Microsoft, in where we can connect not only to SQL Server, but also to Azure SQL and also to Postgres and maybe other engines. As I said, the main feature or the beauty is that it's multi-platform. It's run natively in Windows, Linux, and Mac. So from those platforms, you can connect to your SQL servers on-prem or in the cloud with absolutely no problem. And another key thing that you have within Azure Data Studio is the notebooks, right? You can use these notebooks to run, multiple pieces of SQL code, for example, but you can also mix different programming languages like Python, R, Scala, PowerShell, and T-SQL, right? And you can have everything in one notebook. You can run it, you can get your results, right? And when you save the file, right, and you distribute the file, it will come up with the result, right? And additional, you can include markup text. So with that, you can specify, okay, this is what this script is doing, run the script and the output and distribute it. How do I use the Azure Data Studio notebooks? Well, basically when we have L2 support, right, and someone is, just getting a performance problem in one of the particular instances, they run one notebook that we create, we get the output within the file, they save it and they distribute it with us. So within the file, we can go and dig deeper in, the output of each of those queries and do the analysis. Then when we talk about maintenance, the solution is the Ola Hallegreen script, right? Definitely, if you have to do your backups, your database integrity checks, index and statistic maintenance, Ola Hallegreen is the way to go. You just go download the script. You're gonna see that there is the link over there. You can test it on an environment, but definitely you have all you need to do maintenance in your environment, right? From day one, when you provision a new SQL Server instance, I guarantee you that you have all you need here with the Ola Hallegreen maintenance solution. There is a tool also published in GitHub, which is the SQL Index Manager, which is a graphical tool which allow you to connect to a particular instance, select one, two, or all the user databases, and it will go and check the index fragmentation, right? So it's going to come up with this user interface, and you're going to get all the tables and indexes with all this information like fragmentation, size, amount of row, and based on the best practices or your own definition, you can get the recommendation like do reorganize, do rebuild, etc. And with that, you can generate the script to run it later within Management Studio, or you can run the maintenance directly from this tool. All right, let's go to the demo again. So for that, I need, again, my random workload just to have activity on my local instance, right? And generate, activity. And what I have here is SP who's active, right? As I say, we can just run it and we get all the activity that is happening right now. It is still removing the output file from the previous execution. So it's going to come up in a second, right? So right now we see that it is nothing, right? This is a demo instance. So there is nothing else beside this activity. So let's leave it running for a second. Additionally, while we wait for this, we can just go and check the help option. And with that, we're going to come up with all the input parameters that we can use in order to get a specific type of information of what we are looking for, right? So not the generic output, but the different parameters that we have, really well explained if you don't want to go to the documentation, right? And here, you can have several output ways that you can use through the parameters, right? Well, now this is running. So when we go here, we take this picture and we see, right, what we have running. We also have several backups running at the same time, right? So you see, I can run it as many times as I want. the result set come up really quick. So here I have the last session, which tells me exactly what is the SQL code that is running here. And then, you know, who is running it. If we have any sort of weight types, we see it there. CPU, 10 dB allocation, if it is involved in a block, number of reads, writes, 10 dB status, right? Then against which database is running, which is the program name that is running. In this case is Ostress, right? At what time it started, at what time was the login, etc., etc. So we can run it, as I said, as many times as we want, and we see now that this is running concurrently, right? So we can go and check each of them. At the same time, we can run SP currently executing, which is the one that I created, which again is a wrapper of that one, and it's going to give us the information coming from SP who's active with few other things that I was looking back then. For example, I wanted to check the percentage of the transaction log usage, right? In this case, it's 99%. So I know that I may have a problem over there, right? Most probably we won't catch any log right now, but if we get one, we're gonna see an additional result set at the bottom, just involving the sessions that are in the log. So then when we go to the first responder kit, right, we can, you know, just run SP blitz, right? And this is gonna give us all the recommendation from our instance in terms of what's going on. For example, it just, this is what is happening right now, right? So I have high CPU utilization. I have several weights, right? So here I have more details about those weights. And here I have the in the column how to stop it, right? A link to well, nothing in this case, but we have no. We have some details on how to stop the problem, right? And see here in the first column, we have this priority, and we know which one we should address first. Then this SP Blitz, which will check the best practices in our instance, right? So it will tell us again with this priority, right? All the things that we should be addressing first. And I like this one because you're gonna get information that maybe you were not even considering. For example, if you have your system databases in the C drive, if the transaction log files are bigger than the data file, if you haven't run, for example, here, let's go to this output, right? With priority 1, we didn't take any backup of those databases, which are in full recovery model. The last known DBCCheck DB is over 2 weeks. Server was restarted in the last 24 hours. Transaction log files larger than data file. We have a store procedure using the with recompile hint, right? Information about the cumulative update that we have installed. Inactive tables without cluster index. High number of BLF. System databases on C drive. Dedicated administrator connection is disabled, right? Backup compression off. So you have all these things that you can go and address. Order always by this priority. Again, the goal here is to get this as clean as possible, right? And with that, you know that you may be aligned with the best practices. With SP Bleed Cache, I'm gonna run it specifically for one user database, right? It's going to go through all the plan cache, and it will give you, all the warnings. For example, here there is one which the warnings are pointing to compilation timeout, warnings within the plan, and force serialization. We have force joins. I don't see one here, but we also get if it detects parameter sniffing, right? We get information about the query plan itself, right? So we get it here. And eventually, if it detects that a missing index can help this, well, it's going to propose it here. And if you have implicit conversion, right? When you are comparing variables that are not the same type, you're gonna get information from here. Catherine, are we good with the time?
We are. I see Gianluca, our next speaker, has logged on, but we have still 15 minutes left, so
Okay,
make sure to wrap up. We did have one quick question.
Okay, yes.
Which tool are you using to run the random workloads?
Basically, it's Ozar, right? It's a tool that you can just get certain script, and you can tell it in how many threads you want to run it and how many times, right? So you get one .SQL script with several calls like different selects, update, delete, you name it, against the the sample database, and what is doing is just running multiple times at the same time, right? This is a tool that, there is another which is graphically speaking is I don't recall the name. Ozar is the one I use, which is command line based, but there are other like query stress, if I remember correctly, which is kind of the same with a user interface. You specify the script, the amount of time that you want to run it concurrently, and you just run it, and it's going to run this concurrently against your database. This is nice when you need to do this kind of thing, generate random workload for demos or those kind of things. So then I have the Glenberry's Diagnostic Queries for SQL Server 2019, which is my particular instance. Here, as I said, we can just go and run the queries one by one, right? We can just go and run it one by one, or we can even go and run them, all of them. We're going to get the whole output, and then we can just, do copy paste of each of these result set and put it into this Excel file. Or we can go to Azure Data Studio, right, and have the Glenberry's diagnostic queries created in a notebook, right? And with that, as soon as it came, well, this Azure Data Studio is not behaving very well, I guess. But again, it has the same content that we have within the script, with the same explanation in markup text for each of the section. Let's close this guy. That is not helping now. Oh, it's not a good sign that it's waiting for the script to come up. So, but again, what I wanted to show you here is the possibility of running this through an Azure Data Studio notebook. See the extension here, IPYNB, right? And when you run it, you can also get the results. And you save the file. Probably this file is too big or something like that. That is why it's taking that long. And then you distribute it to your different support teams, right? And you can create any kind of notebook. Let's see if I can go to, no, it doesn't want to. Let's wait a little bit. But again, you can also combine the output of the Glenberry script using DBA tools, right? Well, as we said earlier, probably we already covered how to install it, right? Which is, by the way, for someone who is not a PowerShell expert, is quite easy, right? It's not too complex. But then, you know, in your Windows, you have this tool called PowerShell ISC, right? Where you can, you know, just run your stuff. So what I'm gonna do here, or in this case, actually, we'll tell you what it does, and let's just mention it, and let's switch to the other. What it does here is that you specify here the server name. In this case, I only have this one, but you can specify it with comma separated, so you can run the same statement or the same command to multiple instances, right? And you're gonna run this invoke dbachecks, right? Which is going to do a lot of extensive checks on your instance, right? We're going to do this all checks. It's going to present a summary, right? And at the end, it's going to do a path through to a Power BI file that we have, right? And it's going to populate the output into this Power BI, and you're going to get, you know, all the results of all the checks that we were running through this command, right, in a PowerShell. So you will see for each of the checks if it is pass or if it is fail, right? So a really nice one. So then when we go back to, you know, the integration of DBATools with Glenberry's script, right? Here we're gonna set up, you know, the credentials and all the stuff. And here with one line, what I will do is say, hey, invoke DBA diagnostic query on this particular instance, use this particular credential, then use selection helper, right, and convert the output to a table. Let's see what we can do with this. So we run this, right? Remember, Glenberry script, it has different script, like more than 50, right, which is covering certain different types of, you know, categories that you can check against your database. Within DBATools, we have this selection helper that allow you to specify exactly which one you want to get. For example, I would like to get drive level latency. So we just pick it here, we hit OK, and we get the latency of all the disks in that particular instance. Eventually, if you don't want to use the selection helper and you want to check your version information, right? We do the same. Here we get information about this particular SQL Server. It's a 2017. Let's get the configuration values, right? And again, here I'm just running it for one instance, but you can run it for multiple instances and get all the info at the same time, right? IO warnings, right? You go and get all the IO warnings that you may have at your instance. I don't have here any warning because I just restarted the instance, right? Server properties, right? So, for example, developer edition, the collation, where do we have the data, the log files, which is the product, the CU level that we have, etc., etc., etc. So a bunch of things that we can use and automate, and again, go and collect it from multiple instances. We can get one that I use a lot is actually this test DBA this speed, right? So what it does, we just run it and we're gonna get a recommendation per user database per file, right? In terms of read performance and write performance. So for every single file, we know on which drive it is located, and we can get here some sort of warning or let's say information, right? The read performance is very good for this while we're importer data. Then For others, we have serious I/O bottleneck, slow, need attention. So, easily we can check the status of the disk without a counter. We just have a label here, right? So if we want that our support team level 1 get certain information about the IO or the storage, we can easily run this. And then the one that I was mentioning earlier, right? So you specify here the credential information, and then you have this export DBA instance. You specify the server, you can exclude the databases, and then you specify a path, right? In this case, DBATools. I'm not going to run it now, but if I go to this folder, DBATools, what we have here is, the instance name, right? The server name, the instance name, and a timestamp on when we run this, and it just generates a script with all the SP configure, server roles, credential, DBmail configuration, all the logins, resource governor, SQLation, right? So with that, you can just go and apply directly to your DR instance, or you can save it and put it into your repository. So quite powerful, in my opinion. Well, finally, here in Azure Data Studio, I came up with the output, with the notebook with the Glensberry diagnostic scripts, right? And you see here we have with markup text, we have what the script is doing. We can run it here manually, and we get, the output here. As I said, I give you this file, and you're going to see exactly what I'm seeing right now, including the output, right? So version information, core count, and it's quite an extensive script. So instead of just doing the copy paste with Excel, if you use Management Studio, you can use this notebook, right? And you have everything in one spot. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. Another one that I just want to mention, and you should definitely have a look, is this SQLwatch.io, which is basically based on a SQL shop that will collect information on a schedule basis and save the output into a user database. And with this Power BI dashboard, you can collect your monitoring tool, and you can get your monitoring tool, right? Server activity, weights, query output, weight types, right? So definitely a good open source tool to pay attention. Here I'm just putting some screenshot. Here we have all the references for the scripts that I've been using in the presentation. You're gonna have I'm gonna tweet a link with the presentation and the demo scripts. And with that, I just finished the presentation. Thank you, everyone. And if there are some questions, we can address this now, or again, you can contact me by my email or LinkedIn or Twitter.
I'll give you a tiny applause since I'm unmuted here. Thank you so much, Javier. We don't have any more questions right now, and we should be switching over to the next session shortly. So if anyone else have any questions, ping Javier on Twitter, email, or anything like that. And yeah, thank you so much for that session.
All right. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone.